walking out like this. A dream like this. Pistol grip, it's the clips for that black and old gold. Be some of the world that came so cold. You already know we stay A-by-A. Turn the letters round backwards, still say A-by-A. Hey. And I ain't even skating. Better call security if you wanna let them apes in. Here and have a banana. Throwing up the sound while I'm waving the banner. And I don't care about your letters, it doesn't matter. Your organization was founded after my chapter. Boy, about to get that life membership. Visit the Omega chapter, I be still repping that.
All the bros in the place, raise your pinky and your thumbs. Tell them other groups sit down, cause we the first ones counting that 19 to that 06. All the mother rats behind, we keep them hopeless. Like, man, who wrote this? Me, man, who wrote this? I'ma have to say ice if they ask who I'm with. We them A5 guys, also known as fly guys. Every time you look at us, when that train ride by, we something like the coldest brothers in the school. Give the boys a glass of water and we turn them into ice cubes. Elders make the right move. Scholars to doctors and lawyers, all the way to principals and high schoolers. Uncles don't dance, used to lead the boys walk it out. After the song, believe the girls talk about it. Damn girl, you never seen a bruh send it out, giving women frostbite before the club letting out. Yeah.
Good evening. I want to thank everybody for joining us for episode 2 of Ice Cold Chatter. We are the Alpha Psi Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, located here in Columbia, South Carolina. Hashtag Capital City Alphas. I'm here with my homeboy Dean, my chapter brother. Dean, what's going on with you?
Sorry, man. I'm doing well. How are yourself?
I'm doing good, man. And today we're going to be discussing Black dads. How do men cope with generational trauma? Oftentimes, or rather stereotypically, fathers are considered to be the providers and the protectors of the family. So what happens if the father is either disengaged or if they're unavailable during our childhood? And by when I say our, I mean young Black men. So we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna discuss it. But before we dive into it, Dean, I do want to ask you, like, why do you think it's important that we have these types of conversations, not just amongst ourselves, but also to the public at large?
I think stereotypically it's seen that Black fathers aren't around. So I don't know anyone inside my age range who aren't active in their children's lives. So I think it's important for us to have these conversations to debunk these stereotypes, and also show men who are absent in their children's life that it's important to get back involved into their kids' lives. So
absolutely, definitely not something that We discussed enough, in my personal opinion. We do have a couple guests here who are going to join us for the conversation. So, guys, if you'll go ahead and introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about who you are, so we can go ahead and get things started. And Carlos, we'll go ahead and start with you.
All right. Hey, my name is Carlos Du Bois. Originally born in Charleston, South Carolina, lived in Columbia all my life. Claflin graduate. Went to Clemson a little bit for my master's, but I ended up getting my master's degree from Columbia International University. I'm currently working at Voorhees University as Assistant Director of Campus Life and Student Activities. I just want to say I'm honored to be, part of this podcast. I heard the things that Brother D'Angelo said regarding, generational trauma and Black men with daddy issues and everything. So I'm just kind of honored to be on here to kind of hear. I don't have any kids of my own, so I'm glad to be part of this conversation to kind of get an insight on, how to cope with generational trauma and so-called daddy issues that we may have. I will say my dad passed when I was around 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So role models, I still have my stepfather in my life, but it's kind of different with that relationship. But yeah.
Okay. All right, good deal. And Carlos, I appreciate you for saying daddy issues before me. So Dean was going to get me for saying it. So thank you. So now it's free reign for me to say it. So I really appreciate that. All right. So Mr. Lewis.
What's happening, fellas? How y'all doing? Hello, America, everybody out there watching. My name is Rajon Lewis. I serve many roles in the community. I'm a father of 5 wonderful children, a husband of 1 wife. I am the executive director of Low Country Youth Services, which is a youth development, youth empowerment organization out of the Charleston, South Carolina area. We actually serve Charleston, Berkeley, and Dorchester County with a myriad of, we actually have 5 mentoring programs, youth development, youth empowerment programs that serves over 800 young people in the community between community-based and in-school programming. I love what y'all are doing here with this discussion. I'm looking forward to having a great conversation with you all.
All right, good deal. And this was totally unplanned, but apparently we have 3 Charlestonians or native Charlestonians. So, shout out to the show.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
All right, so we'll go ahead and get things going. We'll go ahead and start the conversation. And I do want to, I guess, so we can establish a little bit of background. And Carlos, you kind of touched on it already. But if you want to expound on that, that's fine. But also Rajon and Dean, for you guys, like, did you grow up with like either your dad in the house with you or a father figure, or was there not an active fatherly presence in the home? So what was that like growing up for you guys?
I guess I'll go. So my father was not in my home. It's kind of funny that we're talking about this. I actually wrote a book called I Need Answers Volume 1. It's a book about actually the story of 27 men about their life story through the lens of whether or not they had a father in their home or a positive male role model and the impact on them. So I wouldn't make that quick plug just right there. But my father, so I had my father in my life. My father was always in my life, but my father never lived in my home. I never lived in a situation where my father was in my home. But I did have a strong male presence in terms of my father being right down the road. I could always reach out to my father anytime I needed to. And I also grew up with my grandfather as well, which really gave me a strong sense of positive manly support. So I did.
And I did grow up with my dad in my household until about the age of 13. And then he and my mom got a divorce. And then a couple of years later, I got a stepdad in the household. And by that time, I was transitioning into living with my grandmother full time due to school. Want to stay in at Burke High School versus going to Sucky North Charleston. So calm down. So
do I need to change? I didn't put on a hoodie.
So I definitely I grew up with a father in my household there, but then the relationship got strained. So for 10 plus years, I didn't speak to my dad. So from birth to 13, he was present, and from 13 on, he was outside of my life.
Okay, good deal. And Lois, did you want to expound upon anything that you said earlier? I think you said you grew up with your stepdad, right?
Yeah, I grew up with my stepfather after the passing of my biological dad. It's different having a stepdad and then having your actual biological dad. The relationship is different. So the things you may get from your actual father, I don't feel like I've received that. But big ups to him. He was there all the time. Anytime I needed him, he was there. But it's just about that connection that I think people, should have with their like biological dad that I missed out on.
Gotcha. And you said your dad passed away at you were how old were you?
10 years old.
10 years old. Okay, I got you. I'll just say I think that I consider you guys lucky. My dad was not an active presence in my life at all, and I think saying he wasn't active is putting it lightly. Actually, he didn't really do a lot for me, and by a lot that meant nothing. But so obviously there's some things I've had to deal with personally, especially given the fact that I'm now a father of 2 teenage girls. I don't have any sons, but still a father nonetheless. But that's something we'll certainly, I'm sure we'll share some of our experiences and our stories. But I do want to open by asking you guys. So, and Dean, forgive me in advance, but when we refer to daddy issues, right? I know people normally associate daddy issues with women for whatever reason. I think I don't know what men call it actually, but can men have daddy issues?
Yes.
Yeah, they can. Yeah.
Okay.
So when you say issue,
Right.
so, and I know I'm probably jumping ahead of your little cheat sheet there. So for me, when I think of daddy issues for a male point of view, I'm thinking of discipline. I'm thinking about what it means to be a man. So I think from that scope, I said I don't like the terminology daddy issue when it comes to men because I'm more sure of a structure point of view for us. So I'm unsure if that's the true terminology for it, but it's definitely like there's a disconnect between, for example, when my father and I talked again, I remember telling him, I'm gonna be a better father than you. I'm gonna be a better husband than you. I'm gonna be a better man than you. Like he remembered this conversation. So for me, it was like a structure. Like you didn't teach me how to do something structurally. So it wasn't for me like more emotionally. It was more so that you failed to prepare me for a role.
So I would push back on that premise, just because. So the general idea of issues means an issue is a problem, right?
Okay.
So you have an issue related to your dad. Those are daddy issues. So just like it may show itself differently, well, we'll say, the general idea is like girls that have daddy issues go on to become like strippers and stuff like that. Your job as a dad is to keep your daughters off the pole. They may jump from man to man to man because they have daddy issues and they're looking for a surrogate father. Men also have that same issue. Our issue shows up in the fact that because we weren't raised by a man, because we don't know what it's like to have a strong male role model in your home, you miss a lot of the key components of manhood in the way you show up in life. So you have to find some kind of surrogate person to step into that place and actually become what you need, or you got to figure it out for yourself. That's how we end up with a lot of young men joining these gangs. What they have are daddy issues. What they are looking for is a strong male figure to be in their life and to show them the way. And what they end up with is a strong male figure who shows them the way to do all the wrong things. And that's what also happens. Also, we have, single moms out here. Shout out to all the single moms out there doing the best that you can. But a lot of these single moms do the best that they can, but you can't teach a woman cannot teach a man to be a man. There's certain things that only a man can teach a man. A woman can love a man all day long. She can want to support him any more than I'll give you a great example. I'm a mentor. I run a mentoring organization, but one of the first kids that I was able to mentor was a young man named Lore. Lore was 8 years old at the time, and he's a black kid from Haiti. He was adopted by a Caucasian family from Haiti. The thing that his family identified was we can love him, we can support him, We can read all the books in the world that we want to. We can take him to all the Black History Month programs that we want to, but we cannot show this man how to be a young Black man in America. So he brought him to our organization so that he would have an opportunity to experience positive Black role models, because they knew he would seek out Black role models, but they didn't want him to find negative Black role models. So just back to the idea of fatherhood, if there's not a father in your life, you're going to seek out that fatherly figure. And if you don't, you really are lacking. It shows up as a deficiency in your life. Again, you're not going to, it may not show up as you're not going to end up on the pole, hopefully, but it shows, it shows up in the way you talk. It shows up the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you treat people, the way you greet people. Do you look a man in his eye when you talk to him? I can tell a young man that grew up with a father in his home in most cases. And I can tell a young man who are just, whose moms are doing the best that they can, but that there's something missing and they're looking for it and they found it in all the wrong places.
Absolutely. What about you, Los? What do you think?
I feel that I agree with Rashawn. I'm saying your name right? Men
Rashawn.
can't have daddy.
That's cool.
Got you. We can't have daddy issues. Abandonment is one. Emotional neglect is another. So there are areas in your life where we can suffer from daddy issues and whatnot. I know for me, my biggest one was not being able to connect. So being disconnected from individuals. I learned that an early age that this is life and that's what it's going to be. So I couldn't put myself in a position to be attached for a certain amount of time or just period to certain people, to certain things, because I know at some point it's going to be gone. Yeah. And it's not my father's fault that he passed early, but that's some things that stem from it. So, yeah.
And just to kind of touch on a couple of things you guys spoke about, Rajon, you mentioned sometimes when we don't have that presence in the home, we may go searching for a quote unquote surrogate father. In that aspect, I think I was blessed because I have an older brother. I had older cousins, I had uncles, had my granddad there. So I didn't have a nightly presence in the home, but I had people to still show me what a man is and how a man should carry himself and act. And even aside from them, even just some of the guys on the corner, if I was someplace I shouldn't have been, the dope boys, they didn't take me in and say, hey, come do this. They were like, they knew I wasn't about that life.
Right.
They were like, look, you need to take it home and to your mom. And so they knew that. So they were smart enough they didn't indoctrinate me into saying, hey, come do what we do. Then you know what? You're better than that. You're smart. You got a future. So you go do something else. This ain't for you. This is for us. So I was blessed in that regard. Go ahead, Rajon.
No, I'm so glad you brought that up because that actually speaks to sort of the gap that we have in the community right now, right? So because of the fact that we now have a generation of kids who really don't know a generation that was raised by their fathers, they didn't establish a code. There used to be a time that the gangsters on the street, you didn't mess with kids, you didn't mess with old people. You respected the old lady in the corner. You might have sold drugs every day, but if Miss Bertha came down the corner and said, "Hey, y'all need to get off this street now. Y'all need to go on in the house," they went in the house. They listened. They had a respect because somewhere their father may not have been in their life, but there was somebody that stepped in and filled the gap in a positive way. Now we have a generation of young men who don't understand that hierarchy, and that old lady come on the street, they're gonna cuss that old lady out. They might shoot up that old lady house.
Right.
Yeah, I heard
we have elders that are afraid of the young people.
Right.
That's daddy issues.
Go ahead, look.
No, I was agreeing with him. I heard somebody say one day that the big homies calling the little homies big homies now. Like it's crazy out here.
Yeah, and it's again like Rajon said, it's pretty much a code that it was an unspoken code at that. Like like you said, if you see, it was a village. You know what I mean? If you saw it, my mom out there, and they would say that listen, your mom don't want you out here. You already know that, so you need to go home. So again, we had people looking out. And Carlos, something you mentioned was abandonment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's something not having a dad around I did experience, because the fact is he wasn't a bad dad. He just wasn't a good dad to me, because I have an older half sister, and he was great to her. You know, brought her cars, and I'm from a small town, so I mean, honestly, he grew up on the next street over, so it wasn't like I never saw him. I saw him every day. He passed by my house to go to my sister's house, who lived behind me. So again, that's me looking. I'm looking like, you know, am I not good enough? Like, why doesn't he want to be? You know, what's wrong with me? You know, like I started questioning myself.
Right.
And my mom never said anything bad about him. She never badmouthed him. You know, and but it was still questions I had, and it did cause a lot of I guess low self-esteem in me then. And it started. I didn't realize it until years later when I started going to therapy, just how it affected me. You know what I'm saying? So, but again, that's, you know, it's a sucky story, but I mean, it's just something I had to go through. But again, you guys both you all came up with some great points. But I also want to ask, like, so we talk about, you know, how it affects us. So how does I guess again, sorry, Dean, these daddy issues or abandonment or lack of a fatherly presence, how does that affect relationships? That can be friendships, it can be romantic relationships, it can be work relationships, relationships with your mom, with your significant other. Like, how do those issues correlate to how, you know, we handle some of our relationships?
So I think Carlos touched on it earlier, and I think it was maybe a year or so ago when I realized that I have a real habit of self-preservation. Like, I don't connect with people truly, because eventually you can leave. And I noticed that it was a trigger from my dad, not because he didn't try to be in my life, but because I refused to be let down. And once I set the boundary mentally that you can no longer be in my life, at that point in time, now he's in my life every day. In fact, he has my daughter right now. But it's more so of I made a choice to protect myself emotionally from him. So my relationship with men have always struggled. And you've heard me say this. I said, we're not friends till we fight, because trauma bonded people. And my friends from high school, middle school, elementary school, those are my friends. I have people in my life who I've grown to love as an adult, but they know I'll tell them in a heartbeat. Until we fight, we're not friends. So I think, wait, Rashawn, you about to say something?
No, I was just gonna say that's how they raise people at Burke High School.
And they do.
That's
they
do.
They do. We don't want to misinterpret the fact that it's violence. I said something the other day that I am my calmness when I know that the situation is violence around, and when things are good is when I tend to question a lot. But I think with my father, and he and I spoke about this recently, about what I learned from his absence, and was the fact that I need to be present in my children's life every day. Like something. I saw a video on Facebook yesterday, and it said, if you're man enough or you think you're a good father, ask your child, what can you do to be a better father to them?
Wow.
And I think, again, I'm in a conference right here. So I told somebody, I said, I don't think I have the emotional stability to ask my kids, hey, how can I be a better father for you? Because like for me, I think I've done a good job, but to have them verbalize what I could have done better at this stage in life, I'm like, oh, no, well, maybe I can go back, but I can't. Time is the one thing we can't get back. So
how old are your kids?
18, 16, 14, 12.
You definitely should ask them.
Yeah, I think that'll be a nice exercise for you.
Yeah, you definitely should ask them. And I'll tell you, I'm sorry, Hook, I can't remember the original question, but I do want to sort of respond to just what he just said about asking your kids about, because that's a key part, right? So one of the things, you know, we grew up in a generation where it was, you know, do as I say, not as I do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a lot different before social media. That was a lot different before they had the whole world at their fingertips, and before they could see what we were actually doing. So It's a lot easier to tell a kid, you know, do as I say and not as I do, when they don't actually know what you're doing. They may know that you leave the house and you be gone all day long, but they don't know that you're turning up in the club. They don't know that mom is twerking on the internet. They don't know like all these things. You getting blackout drunk and just out here in these streets wilding out. They don't know that. But now these kids know a whole lot more, and they're used to a whole lot more. And we have to empower our kids as fathers. We have to empower our kids to communicate with us, because if they can communicate small things, they communicate large things. I will tell you, I have a 23-year-old. My oldest daughter is 23. My second oldest daughter is 22. My third oldest daughter is 20, and my twins are 16. And they will definitely tell me, Daddy, this is what we need you to do to be a better dad. Now, usually I get a pretty good grade, thankfully, but we've invested so much time into making sure that you said earlier, you looked at your dad and you said, I'm going to be a better version. I'm going to be better than you were. My dad challenged me to be better than he was. My dad had his own sets of issues, and the daddy issues that I had that reflected in my life showed up as the fact that because I lived in my dad's house, and I was only in my dad's house like on weekends, I'll go on weekends, and like sometimes I go during the summer for a little while. But I felt like I never got the best parts of my dad. I felt like the everyday stuff that you get with your dad, I never got those things. I never got I'm coming home every day and knowing what his regular schedule is, or what does he like to eat when he comes home, or how does he interact with my stepmom on a regular day, not when I'm over on the weekends and it's fun time. Like I missed a lot of like the very core stuff. So I made a point of it, to do those things for my kids. I made sure that I showed up at all of their events. I made sure that even if it's something as small as the classroom spelling bee, that I'm there on the wall, like, go, you can do it. Like that stuff that showed up. So sometimes daddy issues, the issues that we have as dads, don't show up as negative things. Sometimes it does make us a better version of it, because I always say we deal with things in life two ways. We either duplicate the things that we see, or we eliminate the things that we see. And so I try to eliminate the things from my thought that I witnessed with my dad. I always gonna live with my children. That was something I always I went through a divorce and I couldn't live with my kids for a little while, and that broke my heart. Thankfully, my ex-wife sent the kids to me, and I've had them since they were 4 and 6 years old. So I've always had my kids in the house with me, but that's stuff that I was like, no matter what, I will always do these things. But yes, you definitely want to ask your kids. You want to empower them to tell you, because if they can't tell you that, it's a whole lot of other things they can't tell you either. So man up, put your big boy pants on and listen to them. They need to hear from you.
Absolutely. And Louis, what about you? How do you think daddy issues affect other relationships?
Relationships in terms of, they touched on kids, but I know with women, it makes it hard for us to be vulnerable. I mean, hard for us to be vulnerable in front of women and whatnot, especially when it comes to certain situations. It kind of makes it kind of like we shut down or whatnot. But yeah, trust issues, vulnerability, and just struggle with communication comes from daddy issues a lot.
Yeah. And a couple things. I know for me, it's like, because I think Dean kind of touched on it earlier. I don't trust a lot of men. Like, you know what I mean? Because it's like, not that I'm not sizing dudes up when I see them or anything, but like I keep them at a distance until I get to know them. Luckily, joining this fraternity has helped me overcome that, because I see that there are a lot of genuinely good guys out there, good men, good black men at that, you know what I'm saying? But I had to overcome that because I didn't, I mean, it's how do you trust? How do you build trust with that? You know what I'm saying? The one person who's supposed to be there for you, you don't even know anything about him. He's not there for you. So I had major issues with that. So which most of my platonic friends are women, to be honest with you. I have male friends, but I have a huge family. So most of my friends are my cousins and my brother, and I have some other very good friends outside my fraternity as well. But for the most part, it was, I have a lot of platonic women as friends, primarily because I was raised by women for the most part, so they're nurturing, they care about you, they're express themselves. So that was one thing with me. And the other thing is, as far as romantic relationships, I never had a guy there, a man in the house to show me this is how you cater to a woman, this is how you treat a woman, this is how you respect a woman. The first thing my brother and my cousins asked me when I came home from school was, how many girlfriends you got? So naturally, I'm thinking my goal is to get as many women as possible. So that's because when they ask me, I want to be able to give them a number, So that kind of led, through college years and the young adulthood. That was kind of my mentality until I got older, and I'm like, you know what, I'm doing something wrong here. Like this can't be right, And then it's probably why I waited until I was like 40 plus to get married. But again, it's that's just a part of me that I wish I had somebody there to show me, because if I could take it all back there, I did a lot of things. I would have done a lot of things differently, and not just been out there like that. You know what I mean? So, but again, that's just it's. I don't think a lot of people, and I get maybe back then. I think now the fathers that we understand the importance of being in our kids' lives. I don't think that I don't want to speak for them, but I don't know if a lot of fathers back then they really understood the impact that they could have. I guess they figured as long as the bills were paid and they took care of mom and stuff like that. But it's a little bit more than that. There's more to being a parent or being a father than just providing security and a place to live.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in the book that I wrote, so again, these stories are not my stories. I spoke to 27 different men and got their stories. So that's why I love this book so much. Not trying to sell the book, but since we're here, it is available at Barnes and Noble. Anyway,
shameless plug. I'm with you. Good.
But the thing that I found is actually exactly what you said, Hook. Like so many guys that I spoke to were like, because I didn't have a dad in my home, there were so many things I went out looking for. There's so many things I did not understand. That the way I treated women was largely dependent on, because I didn't know how a man was supposed to treat a woman. Most of the time, they usually had some other man that was with their mom or something like that usually didn't have good relationships in most cases. So they watched other men beat their mom. They watched other men cuss their mom out. They watched other men mistreat their moms. And so they sort of, again, eliminate or duplicate. That's what you do with the information. That's sort of what they embedded into their personalities. Also, the part that we didn't talk about is the fact that sometimes the father that you have in your life is not like you may have been better off if that person wasn't around at all. I had several guys that said my father was in my home and he was my nightmare. He was the thing that would wake me up in the middle of the night screaming and crying because of how terrible it was having this man as my father. So that also has its own set of daddy issues that it comes with. So we have to be very, having a father is great, but you also want to make sure that father that you have is giving you that example. One thing that I did, the last interview that I did for my book was my own father. Right. So the last person I interviewed, my interview number 27, July 18th, 2018 was my father, Herbert Lee Jenkins Jr. And he told me his story. That was the first time in my life I ever heard my father's story. I was 38 years old. I had never heard my father's story. And this man raised me. And he told me about the experiences that he had growing up and the neglect that he witnessed from my grandfather towards my grandmother. And he told me about the other families that were going on outside of our family. And he told me about watching, domestic violence. He told me about the fact that my grandfather never told him that he loved him. You'd be amazed how many people out of the 27 said that they had a father in their life who never said to them, I love you. He told me that's why it was so important to him that he told us that he loved us. So sometimes, and I hope, who said that their father got their kid now? D'Angelo, you said your dad has your kids now?
Yeah.
I hope that you have the opportunity to sit down with your dad and ask him about his story. Ask him how he grew up. Ask him, what happened that made you want to leave. And because if I can understand those things, it will make me a better version of myself. So it definitely will benefit those areas that you were talking about, Hook. How you treat your children, how you treat your wife, how you treat people in the world, how you're able to build relationships with other men. That lack of trust that you had before you joined this great organization, like it's going to help you in all of those areas. So yeah, man, there's a lot. We got to do a lot of self work, but that's absolutely it.
I want to say something, then I want to ask a question. I was watching a podcast and one of the guys made a statement. He said, "Would you rather have an absent father from your home, or would you rather have a father at the house with bad qualities?" And that really kind of like sparked, a conversation in my mind, and then here in the office as well. Also, my question to you guys is, being a father, how long should someone hold on to daddy issues? Is there a limitation to that? Being that you guys are fathers now, like holding on to daddy issues, does that affect the relationship you have with others? Because I've heard fathering others help heal, fatherless wounds. So I just wanted to ask us that question.
It took me a while to because like I won't lie, like my dad is deceased now. He died a couple years ago. And that that was going to segue into the next question anyway, so I'm glad you asked this. So I'm 47 years old and I still have daddy issues. You know what I mean? Like I'm not gonna sit here and lie and say, oh, I'm over it. No, I'm not. There. Now what I will say is I have not let those issues I have with my dad affect my relationship with my daughters, because they get all of me. So I think sometimes the only negative part is sometimes I tend to overcompensate because I didn't have that there. Sometimes especially with little girls, they'll try you. So there are things that I endure and that I put up with for the sheer fact that I didn't have a dad there. And I'm thinking, and I get angry sometimes, but I don't get angry often. I don't fuss a lot. I don't do a lot of things. It's more so like I guess an authoritative friendship, if that makes sense. Like we have a really good relationship, but when I put my foot down, they know, okay, Dad's not playing. But I try not to. I'll put it this way: my daddy issues have not negatively impacted my girls, but it like I said, I tend to overcompensate. So I think that there are a lot of things that I can probably not do, but I only do it primarily because my dad wasn't there.
Well, can a positive dad cause daddy issues?
Yes. You can. So issues. So issues. Just to go back to the original question that you asked, you said, do you ever get over? When do you let go of daddy issues? So daddy issues, like any other issue, will be there until you find a way to deal with it. And this is where I'm gonna encourage my black men watching this, and black women as well. If you need therapy, seek therapy. There is nothing wrong with seeking therapy. There's nothing wrong with taking care of your mental health and going to someone who's a professional to help you to work through these things. So what they actually do is they sit down with you and you have an opportunity to speak to someone who is not going to judge you, who's not going to call you a punk, who's not going to call you a sissy, who's not going to talk down to you. They literally just ask you questions so you can think through your own processes and deal with it and begin to heal. But what we do is we bury it and we say, I'm okay. And we I'm okay ourselves to death. I'm okay ourselves in a heart attack. I'm okay ourselves into high blood pressure. I'm okay ourselves into heart disease. Like, we have to sit down and talk to people so we can work through these things. If you go through a divorce, you're going to have issues with that divorce until you find a way to work through the issues that caused that divorce and the residual things that came out of that divorce. Just getting into another marriage will not heal what you went through in that divorce. Just like having kids is not going to heal your daddy issues. If you have daddy issues and you have kids and you don't find a way to a healthy way to deal with those, some of those traumas, again, if you don't eliminate them, you're going to duplicate them. So the same things that you had issues with your father, you are going to implement with your children. If you're a problem with your dad that he was an alcoholic and he beat women and you didn't learn that lesson, guess what, buddy? Guess what's coming down the pike for you? we have to be very mindful of the things that we allow to control us, and that's going to be in your own time. You have to do your own individual work to make it happen. So I can't tell you there's a specific time that you need to let it go by, but I will say that once you identify that there's a problem and you can really say there's an issue there, seek help, seek therapy, talk to somebody.
Agree. What about you, Dean?
I agree. And I'm sitting here not trying to agree with Rashawn so much, but I mean, it's the reason why.
All right, bro.
Listen, it's the reason why.
Great education, no Charleston High School.
It's the reason why I said when I pitched the topic to you, I went out and found the people that I felt that would benefit, that we would benefit from this discussion for. Because I've watched this podcast before, and I understand he can articulate a lot of things, but he can also understand from a Black man growing up inside Charleston, where violence is second nature to us, and from our grade. So the fact that you have 2.25, because he was born and he wasn't raised there, that like we grew up in Charleston where we understood the fact that 95% of our students didn't make it to the age of 16. So the fact that and 1 in 3, so my dad was in my life until 13, but when they got a divorce, it was like his issues took over his duties as a father. So I didn't get to see when in the years I thought were informative to me, the 13 to 18, 13 to 19 years old. And that's why I keep saying about the structure wise. Like my mom did a great job. My dad, my second dad, my bonus dad did a great job. But even then, like Carlos said, that you're me. I'm the reflection of you. I didn't get that from Nate. Gerald wasn't there. So then, like Rashawn said, like his first time hearing his dad's story, 2018. I learned my granddaddy name a year ago for the first time. I saw a picture of him a year ago for the first time. So like when you have these disconnection in relationships that are important to you, my goal was to be like you. I'm overcompensated in my parenthood that I think I did. Now my kids can say, hey, you could do the A, B, C, D, E, F, G better. But for me, I'm like, from what I had and what I'm trying to instill in you, I'm doing more than what I know how to do. So, but definitely seek therapy, I think.
Yeah. And Dean, it's funny you said that because it was only after my dad passed that I learned, because, growing up, I always thought that he and my mom were just a fling, like, one night stand or something that happened and here I come. But I found out they had a full-blown relationship. It was a forbidden relationship, but that meant the world to me, because I'm like, you know what? I was conceived out of love. I wasn't just conceived on, and that to a kid, that means a lot, because I'm thinking, okay, I wasn't meant to be here. Things didn't work out between them for varying reasons, but here I am finding out later that they took trips together and they went this place and that place, and I'm like, why didn't you tell me this all along? And maybe they just didn't. Maybe she didn't think it was important, but it really was, because that could, if had I heard this years ago, that could have made all the difference. And kind of segue into my next question, and this is something that's really intently personal for me. But I want to find out from y'all, like how do you make peace with an absent or deceased father?
And
for this one, I'm just going to listen, because it's I can't say I've made my peace, so I'm better, but he's not here, so I can't make peace with him.
Yeah,
this is not a conversation that we've ever had. Yeah, it's a conversation that we'll like. Well, I mean, he's dead now, so we'll never have it. But I've made my peace, but not my peace with him. So how do you make peace with somebody who's not there, or somebody who's just completely absent?
That's tough, bro. What I would say, forgive. Like you have to, especially if he's deceased and there's no opportunity for there to ever be the closure that you could get from having that conversation. In your heart, you have to find a space that says, whatever it may be, whatever it was, I still made it here. And because I made it here, I'm still the man that I am. I'm still the father that I am. I'm still the person that I am. In spite of it all, God still saw fit to bring me through it. And with that, it costs you more to continue to carry that ought for him. It costs you more to carry that than to let it go. So in your heart, you gotta forgive and let it go, or it will weigh on you and burden you and carry you, and it will show up in negative ways in your life. But once you let it go, it will free you. I think I want to say it was Steve Harvey I heard say one time, depression and joy can't live in the same place.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if you got something that you're carrying that is weighing you down like that, that means that it's taking the space that should belong to something else.
Yeah.
See, I don't think I ever wanted to have that conversation with my dad. I think with his substance abuse and the fact that he did the work to get himself better, and when my wife told me, "Hey, I'm not going to be married to a guy who has these issues and who can't have a conversation with their dad," so she brought my dad back into my life. It was all because of the work she did before he got to me. So right now, I think Braden is about to be 13, so about 14 years clean, sober. So the work he did for himself showed me the fact that I never had to have the conversation with him. Now, listening to you is like, do I need to have this relationship with him? I mean, this conversation with him? Because for me, it's like we've said, I'm proud of your girlfriend, I'm proud of this. He back and forth, I love you. And I think personally, I put it to the side. I forgave him as a teenager. And I even expressed to him, I forgive him. I forgave him. But for me, it's like, I think going back down that road could trigger things in his life too that he probably he doesn't want to go back to. And I'm trying to be protective of that conversation and respect the fact that he's moved on to a different chapter in his life. Because again, I don't know. And Rashawn, you're the expert here. It's more so for me. It's like I'm doing my best as a Black dad in America, not to traumatize my children.
Yeah.
And I don't want to re-traumatize my dad for all the things that he did wrong, or what I perceive that he did wrong. And like you say, God had put me to the place to where I'm at today. And while I had my struggles in life, I'm better today with my life. So I'm not sure if that's a conversation that he would want to have.
Go ahead. I would ask him, but I would literally ask him. It just so happened that I was writing a book, and I was like, Dad, I want to interview. Would you be interested in being interviewed for my book? But after interviewing my dad, it made me want to interview every adult in my life, because like your dad, my dad had issues. Like, trust me, my dad had issues. But once I spoke to him and I heard his story, it put so much in context. There was so much more that I was able to understand about the person that he was, the way that he showed up in the world, the way he carried himself on a day-to-day basis, the stuff that really bothered him. I never understood why certain things bothered my dad so much. And then he told me a story like, oh, I get it. Or why he would do certain things. Again, that's when I started adopting you eliminate and you duplicate, because there were certain things my dad definitely duplicated that he learns directly from my grandfather. There were some things that my dad was trying to get over that he experienced with my grandfather and with the men that were in his life before that taught him certain things. You know what I mean? And if you understand those things, you may have a better understanding of why did my father end up in the situation with the addiction situation that he did. There's certain things that your father probably experienced at a very young age that made him feel like I need to do these things that put him in that position. Dad, what was going through your mind? Like literally having that conversation. Like after that, I literally want to interview. I wanted to interview every single person. My mom is watching right now. Hey, mama, I want to interview my mom and find out her story. And I've known my mom my whole life, but I bet you one thing. There's certain things I still don't know because we've never intentionally had that conversation. And I would even flip it on you, D'Angelo. Your kids need to have that story with you, that conversation with you. Mm-hmm. It's one thing to know your dad as man who has made it, and you've done all these amazing things, and you've joined this amazing fraternity that's empowered you and emboldened you. But they need to hear about your insecurities. They need to hear about when you was downtown causing fights at Teen Jam and the results of those things. They need to hear about you going to Burke High School and the things that you experienced growing up on Back to Green. That they won't understand because they won't understand it because they didn't grow up in that situation. Mm-hmm. They didn't grow up I'm pretty sure you live in a nice community, right? Where they can walk outside and ride their bikes anytime they want to. Without any conflict, without any issues. They don't know what it's like to not be able to go 2 streets over without getting into some kind of altercation.
Right.
They need to know that's part of your story. So not only would I recommend you having that conversation with your father, I recommend you having that conversation with your kids.
So my kids know my story. And
Perfect.
Two, I'm from East Side, not back to Green.
Oh, sorry, East Side. East Side.
I don't want nobody watching this podcast from false claiming anything, especially those people. But
shout out to Gaston Green.
But definitely, like so that's one thing I said. I was very transparent with my children from the freshman years of high school to every struggle I ever had in life. My kids know. I've never wanted to be a secret to them. I wanted them to understand that, hey, your dad didn't come from perfection. Like he was molded. Someone groomed him in order for me to be the person I am today. So my kids, they know that story. That's the one thing I've always prided myself in, being the fact that I've been transparent with my kids. Now, what I'm saying now, my sons, they're the younger ones, so they're the 14 and 12-year-old. These guys, to me, just don't get it. Like I told my son yesterday, I say, if you get off your game and you come spend time with your old man, like we can have the relationship that I think we should have. He's like, first of all, you're not old. Two, he said, first of all, you're not that old. Two, he said, we have a great relationship. I said, well, I don't view it as that. I view it as the fact that for me, like, and I guess I'm getting older in my mind. I'm like, I want to make sure I'm doing everything to prepare him to be the man that I need him to be, and his wife for him to be. So that's from that standpoint. But I think it's hard for me to sit back and realize that maybe my daughters may have been short-sighted because I had to grow in my relationship with my wife. My wife and I just had this conversation a couple of days ago that I had to grow. And while my mom has been through a lot with my dad, it made a point for me not to do certain things. But in the same thing, I think I've removed relationships from my wife, like giving her the opportunity to be that thing. So, well, I'm gonna cater to her. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna eliminate her thinking ability. And I'm gonna make sure that everything's done to where she don't have to question certain things. And I think that I told her too yesterday, I handicapped you because I took away your voice in situations where I just took control of everything. So I think for my mom, my siblings call it a sharing effect, that we think we can do everything ourselves. And being in a marriage have been like the eye opener, like, because now it's not only your opinion and your thoughts, you have to marry that to the person to make sure that you're a great team, essentially. I'm rambling.
Yeah, being married will definitely do that to you. I can definitely.
You were married for like 9 months, man.
2 years, man. 2 years. 2 years. 2 years, man. Yeah.
All right.
Do you guys see like a shift, like in terms of kids back in the past used to seek that attention from their fathers? Now it's like fathers now are giving more attention to the kids.
Like I said, I know I can speak for me. When I say I overcompensate. You know what I mean? Because I think I get on my girls' nerves, to be honest with you.
Y'all see the TikToks and the Facebook videos.
Yeah, you know, they're and you see those TikToks, they become less and less because it's not cool to do TikToks with dad anymore.
Yeah.
But they come in, they go in the room, they close their doors. And because they're young ladies, I'm not just gonna barge into their room. So it's like I'm knocking. I gotta wait for them to answer, and then they'll let me know when it's okay to come in. And I come sit down, and they're like, "Okay, why are you in here again?" You know what I mean? So, but I tell my girls I love them constantly. I always shower them with affection. And pretty much I give them all the things that I did not get. You know what I mean? So, but again, my story is a little different because it's one of those things where. It's impossible for me to make peace with my dad now. You know what I'm saying? So it's a little different. But the dynamic has definitely shifted. Because I mean, honestly, even with my mom, like my mom was great, but she wasn't a very affectionate person. Like she wasn't constantly telling me she loved me and doing all these other things. But I see now, just with my friends, all my friends I know, they are great with their kids. They're hands-on. They're doing all these things, and I saw less and less of that. Growing up as a kid, I mean, we were all playing with each other, but we seldom saw like us taking, going to, they would come watch us play games and stuff like that. But outside of that, they didn't really do a whole lot with us. So personally, I think the dynamic has shifted a little bit. So Rajon, D'Angelo, what about y'all?
All right. So what I'll say, Carlos, is definitely that the dynamic has shifted. There was a time definitely that that the kids would crave to get that attention from parents. Largely, to Hook's point, that a lot of our parents didn't grow up in really like affectionate homes like that. Like that wasn't really the norm. Shoot, my best friend, like he routinely says, my mom hugs you more than she does me. And like literally, when I go to his mom's house, the first thing I do, hey, Miss Jackie, and I hug my mom. That's my other mom's. So I walk up and hug her, and he's like, she never hugs me. Like but now this younger generation, we are the generation that wants to give our kids everything that they never had, that we didn't have growing up. And because we try to offer so much, our kids don't value that. So what I learned with my kids is I try to meet them where they are. I try to meet my kids where they are. So I mentioned earlier, we have five children. We have 4 girls and 1 boy. And what I recognize with them very early is that each of them needs something different from me. So what I try to do is I try to meet them where they are. One year we took a trip to, we went to the mountains. We did Christmas in Todd, North Carolina. And what I did was I did sign up. So we had 2 rules, right? One rule was we only got an hour of phone time a day. Every the rest of the day, nobody could be on the phones. That included adults. Nobody could be on the phone. So we had 1 hour of phone time. Outside of that, it was all spending time with the family or doing something in the cabin or around the cabin. The second rule was that I had to sign, each of my kids signed up for 2 hours of individual daddy time. And we would do whatever it is they wanted to do. My oldest daughter was playing basketball at the time. So me and her sat down and watched film. We watched basketball film. We broke down LeBron and Kobe and AI and Jordan. And we talked about it. And we looked at her film and watched her games. And we talked about things that she could do better. My now 22-year-old, she wanted to talk about colleges. So we sat down and we talked about college. We talked about internship programs. We talked about study abroad programs. We talked about all these opportunities. Now, mind you, she's 11 at the time. But this is what she wanted to talk about. All right. My then 11-year-old, then 9-year-old daughter wanted to play pool. So we played pool. And then the twins, my son wanted to play video games. So we played wrestling and Madden on the Xbox. And my other daughter wanted to play Jenga and Uno. I spent the time with them that I thought they needed, but I spent it doing things that they wanted to do, as opposed to it being, come do what daddy wants you to do. Come jump into my world and do no. So even now when we're trying to do stuff, I try to make sure that it's really on their terms. So yeah, we are getting that time. I'm still getting that good daddy time. I still have a daughter that wants to do TikToks with me, Hook. So it still rocks. She's just like, Daddy, you don't do TikTok with me that much. But when she first got the channel rocking, like we used to do TikToks every week. That was like one of our rules. But now they still have their individual time. And I'll give you one more idea. My homeboy, McKendrick Dunn, he's in the book. But one thing that he told me was that something that he did with his son is every Tuesday they had Talk Time Tuesdays. Every Tuesday. And he said no matter what was going on, Tuesdays at 7 p.m., 7 to 9 p.m., that was him and his son's time every single week. And that time might be spent like just driving around and hanging out or whatever. But he said that was on my schedule. And it was on my son's schedule. We spent time doing it every week. And his son's actually, he is in college. I want to say he's about to graduate from Coastal Carolina, but they still do Talk Time Tuesdays every week. So if you embed it into sort of y'all's way of life and your family culture, it's a great way to continue that relationship and establish that communication so that they know like this time is here, so I might as well talk to them while I'm here, and doing those types of things that they like so they don't feel like it's just always boring time with dad.
That's dope. That's dope.
Yeah, that is.
Absolutely. What about you, Dean? Anything you want to add to Carlos's question?
Hold on. I'm texting my son to talk about Tuesday. Get a schedule. I'm getting a schedule. So I don't know. I think the original question was have the generation shifted into the parents craving attention. I don't think it is. Like to piggyback on what you guys said, the first time I heard my mom said I love somebody, my wife said, "All right, I love you." My mom said, "I love you too." And I looked at her. I'm like, what? Like,
Who are you?
you've never said that to us. And I said, us. And so I called my sister. I was like, girl, guess what mama just said us now? And I said, for real? So now we call from that one moment, I want to say that maybe 10 years ago. Every morning we get a text message, hey, my children, love you all. And like she'll call and get off the phone and say, hey, all right, take care, I love you. And for me, it wasn't a big thing, but it was shocking the fact that I guess because we didn't grow up in that household. My wife didn't grow up in a household. Like, they don't care who it is. Every 1,500 cousins get off the phone. All right, I love you guys. I love you. And like, they're very expressive with their love. So the one thing that she brought into our family was that I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. And for me, it's like, hey, I pay the bills. I spend time with you. I do everything you want to do. That's my love. But now, like, my kids got older. I was like, all right, love you guys. Like, my son, I don't care what it is. Like, hey, daddy goes to the trash can. All right, man, love you. I'm like, dude, I'm going right here. Like, he doesn't care. Like, he's very expressive when it comes to, hey, dad, I love you. I want you to know I love you. And for me, I changed my way of thinking with that. Like, the one thing I learned too was that going through this process, I have 16 other men in my life to where I've never told. My best friend's Ian Burnett. We've been friends since we thugged it out on the playground in second grade. I've never told that guy I love him dear in my life. He knows I love him. His mother, because she passed last year, the year before last, she knows, like you said, that's my other mother. So for us, it's like, hey, ma, love you. But I never told him. But I told the 16 guys here through the process, all right, bro, I love you. And I'm like, dang, that's a different growth. So I called him the other day and I said, you know what, bro? We've been rocking before marriage when I had a hairline and gold teeth and, you know what I mean, size 20, like slender kid. I'm like, dude, like, we've never said I love you, man. Like, he said, bro, you know I love you. Like, that's we shouldn't have to say it.
Right.
So for my kids, it was more so of I went out and seek them because they'll be in their room. Like, hey, let's go take a walk. Hey, let's go do this. Let's get away. Let's do this. I was intentional with them. Now, my kids are kids. Like, I always tell people that. My kids, my son still believes in Santa Claus. He's 12. Right? They still ride bicycle, they skate, they are kids. Like, they're our kids, like how you grew up. Like, right. they're so thankfully that's what my wife has made sure that they've been not, like, none of my kids have social media. Like, that's hard in this day and age to say that. Like, my daughter's in college and she hates social media, but they get it from their mom.
That's rare.
So for me, it was more so of I wanted to be in every facet of my children's life, so I seek them. I don't want them to ever have to be on a podcast, like I said, and say that, hey, my dad was absent or my dad was there. Because as soon as you said something like that, I'm dropping a dish record with receipts. So I'm coming with everything I've done for you. So yeah, I think I answered the question.
That's dope. And Carlos, thanks for asking, because that's you know, I was definitely I got a lot of takeaways from Rajon and Dean's comments also. And we got a couple minutes left, man. And before you guys have been great, man. This has been a phenomenal conversation. So I do appreciate you. But I do have one final question I want to hear from each of the three of you. So how, and we may have touched on it already, but how do we break the cycle?
So I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna give all my time away to Rajon. Nope, take me off the screen.
Nope.
I'm giving to Rajon.
All right, Rajon, floor is yours.
So we break the cycle of what is interpreted to be a father by becoming the fathers we think we deserved. And I love hearing that the gentleman on this call, on this broadcast, had no issue talking about the issues that we've experienced. And the truth is, you know, I was talking to a lot of the young men. So this week, like the topic of masks has been really heavy for me and for the kids that I've been dealing with this week. And so what I always tell them is that, you know, men, we're allowed two emotions, right? We're allowed happy and mad, which is in really everything in the middle. We never really learn how to process. So we're either really happy and we feel really good about what's going on, or we're mad. And that mad may actually be sad that turns into mad. It may be embarrassed that turns into mad. Neglected that turns into mad. Abandoned turns into mad. Anxious turns into mad. Everything turns into mad. And when we talk about fatherhood and the absence of not having a father, a lot of the young people that we see walking around having these anger issues, having, they don't know how to handle themselves in school. That kid's not mad. That kid's hurt. That kid's alone. That kid feels depressed. That kid feels abandoned. That kid feels neglected. And if we become not only to the children that are in our lives, because yes, we want to make sure that we are raising our children as to be strong, young Black men and women who can support, who can uplift this community and really save this country, because this country is in some real trouble if we don't get it together soon. But we also have to be fathers in our communities. There are kids outside of our homes that need our support. My kids are going to be all right. But guess what? My daughters are going to need husbands. My sons are going to need friends. And so I want to make sure that the world is filled with just as many positive young men and positive young women and positive examples for my kids to be around, that they won't have a lot of the issues that I experienced growing up. So shout out to the fellas here for taking the time to have this conversation. But to me, the answer is we become the men that we knew we needed in our communities. Yes, in our homes, but also around our homes, in our schools, in our churches, in our universities, in our nonprofit organizations. We can be the change. We can be the difference. It starts with one person.
Absolutely. Wow. All right, Louis, what you got?
That's powerful. I don't know if I can top that, but I think Rashawn mentioned earlier that first identify and then find a solution. Having self-reflection and awareness, engaging in self-reflection, increases your chances of not falling back into the same cycles. Finding healthy coping mechanisms. So me, when I get into a certain stage of depression, let's say, I listen to podcasts, as I do meditation. I hit the gym every day, just finding different creative outlets, even if it's me just picking up my camera, going to take some photos of nature, or just finding somebody to take a picture, photos of, developing cultural and spiritual practices. I don't know how or what people believe in nowadays, but just developing that spiritual relationship with God is powerful. Also, I've since the passing of my father, I had a group of boys then, but men now, that we're still friends since middle school. Like, they've been my support system. I have no issue with telling them, I love you guys. I can shout some of them now: Kobe, Marquise, James, Hakeem. Like, if y'all boys watching or listening, like, I appreciate them. That they're my support system. So finding a support system to kind of lean on, and those guys, and not to dismiss my family, but those guys really been there for me from then to now. So yeah.
No, that's phenomenal. And you touched on one major thing. A lot of my friends and I, we've only recently begun telling each other that, before we hang up the phone, say, hey man, I love you, and because we understand that we're blessed to be honestly alive, because we're there. A lot of friends, like every single day on social media, is like somebody we know, either our age or younger, is passing away. So we don't borrow time right now. So our time is really is valuable, is limited. But again, this conversation really exceeded my expectations. So Dean, thank you for bringing these two gentlemen on. You guys were phenomenal. This was very therapeutic for me. I needed this. I know that everyone needs this, but I needed this personally. So just for me, gratitude. I really appreciate you guys. Carlos, thank you. Hope everything works out for you over there in Voorhees, and just keep mentoring, keep being the person you are. Rajon, I'm definitely going to get that book, man. So send me the deets on that book. I need that.
Gotcha.
And Dean, go ahead.
Carlos is our chapter brother.
Say what?
Like, he's our chapter brother, man. Like, get off of online and come in the house. He's our chapter brother.
Hey man, you know what? I do Zoom meetings. I do the meeting via Zoom, so I don't even know who's.
Look,
Yeah, man, I got to do better.
Yeah. So there's two things I want to say, and I'm maybe speaking beforehand. So one, we do have a derby coming up, and I would be remiss not to mention this because it's our generous wonder for us to be able to go in the community and do the things we need to do. It is May 7th, May 5th. You can go to this our Alpha Psi 11 page and get the details there. And number two, I've reached out to Senator Tamika Devine because I want her to come in next month, you too, Rashawn, about this legislation that we just passed about this open carry law.
oh man.
And I know, like, you ran for
State House of Representatives.
Yeah, I know you ran for it. And I know this has been your platform from 2018. So I think before, like, it's not even summertime, we've had 3 deaths in Northeast already in gun violence, which is unheard of. So before the summer gets out, we need to have this conversation to educate our kids.
Say less.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. So yeah, we'll certainly be, and Dean, we'll be talking about that. So we'll start working on that. But again, this has been great, man. And for the audience, make sure you guys make sure you share, make sure you follow us as well. We're bringing you top-notch content here, and these are things that and we really want to touch on things that people don't necessarily feel comfortable talking about, but we want to talk about these things. But again, guys, this has been great. I appreciate you for joining, and we'll be having you guys on again soon. So again, take care, and for the audience, make sure you guys like and continue subscribing, and we'll see you next month.